Hello and welcome back to the Nitro RX podcast. It's been a little while, but we're very excited to be back and we're bringing you today a driver interview. I'm one of your hosts, Nabila and we're coming back off of the grand finale in Las Vegas. And we thought it'd be the perfect time to also take a look back at the event and the season. And we're going to be joined today by Gray Leadbetter. And I've also got my wonderful co-host, Timo Albers Daly, on the show today, obviously, as well. How are you doing, Timo?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good, thank you. And looking forward to chatting about this whirlwind of a season that seems to have been pretty short but pretty quick at the same time. I don't know what it'd be like for you, Gray, but we'll find out in a second and just get stuck into it with you.
Absolutely. How are you doing, Gray? Thanks for joining us today.
I'm doing great. I We just got home probably a week ago, so we're trying to get settled down after Vegas and everything the past month.
Right. Where are you located in the US?
North Carolina.
Okay. All right. So you're going through a little bit of time change as well right now.
Yeah, we basically went from Saudi Arabia to Vegas within the span of like a week, which messed up my time change completely, and then back home. So it was a mess.
Oh, I bet. I bet. All right. Well, since we know how crazy it's been for you, let's wind the clock all the way back to the start and ask you how you first got into motorsport.
So I started at 3 years old. I wanted a plastic toy car that you could get at like Walmart or just something that like a little kid would want to like drive around the driveway. My parents said no because we have a gravel driveway and they just didn't want to listen to it all the time with the plastic tires. So instead, we had friends that raced dirt bikes and they were like, get her this like electric four-wheeler type thing. And it's small and it's little and like a 3-year-old can ride on it. And so they got me one, and I guess I fell in love with it. I was 2 years old, I don't remember. And then they got it for me for Christmas, and then my birthday is a few weeks before Christmas. So a year later rolls around. I'm turning 4 years old, and they're like, well, she can race dirt bikes at 4 years old, and she seems to really like it. So they got me a PW 50, and I started riding it with training wheels, kind of fell in love with it. And then next thing I know, I was racing dirt bikes in the woods at 4 years old and kind of just kept going from there. There's really just anything I got to drive, anything I got to experience, I fell in love with. So now somehow we ended up here.
That's
I feel
awesome.
like
That
racing
is
drivers
quite the
make me feel
start.
like I was underachieving at 4 years old.
I feel the same way when anybody else says something, so it's fine.
Clearly fell in love with it though, and it seems to have aggressively expanded, shall we say, in the rest of kind of your career so far. It seems weird to use the word career when you're still like silly young, but there we go. And I mean, maybe just me making the connection there, but fun that you have an electric car as your first kind of car toy to get used to, and then you kind of fast forward and then you're in the big toy with Extreme E. But we'll get to that. So Nitrocross with the Group E having the electric categories there, it's just an interesting thing to kind of trace back and see that you could make that leap if you wanted to. But you've been in SXS in Nitrocross this season, and you got P3 in the standings by the time we were done with it, which is not too bad at all. So I want to know about the season from your perspective, and did you have this expectation that you wanted to get within the top three to begin with, or what were you thinking, or did you kind of surprise yourself?
So going into the first round down in Mid-America, I it was all thrown together last minute. Like I didn't even know that I was going to end up there until a week beforehand. And so I ended up just showing up last minute and just jumping in the car. I had raced Mid-America before, but it was 4 years ago now at this point when they just first opened. The track is nothing like it is now. And so we just flew down there and it was a ton of fun. And I was just like, my only goal is to not crash the car. I haven't drove all-wheel drive in I think it was 2 years at that point, just because I had been focusing on off-road and the truck and all of that, which is all rear-wheel drive. And I never raced a Can-Am. I never really drove a Can-Am besides once prior, and that was a test day for like literally 5 minutes. And so I was just like, I'm gonna go out, do the best I can. Everybody I'm racing with, or majority of the kids that I was racing with had already been running the Mid America off-road season there, so they knew the track, they knew everything about it, and they raced Can-Ams or they raced all-wheel drive like normally. So I went down there and was just like, I'm just gonna do the best I can. Like, there's no pressure. This is just for fun, like whatever. And then I ended up fourth both days. I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll, you know. So we just kind of started looking into it, and then we went into Salt Lake City, which I'd never ran four-wheel drive on pavement, so we go back to that problem. And I was just like focusing on doing the best I can, just having fun. That was my biggest goal for the Nitrocross, was to simply just have fun with it. And ended up fourth again both days. And I'm like, okay. And then we go back into the next round, and then we go to Arizona, ended up fourth again, which seems to be a reoccurring thing. It was very annoying, but it was
So did
fun.
that
It was all
frustrate
fun.
you that you kept getting P4 and you couldn't quite get the
Yeah.
P3? And like, what do I have to do here?
Yeah, it was very annoying after about the third, fourth place finish. But then we finally got to Arizona and we got on the podium, and that felt amazing. And I actually got on the podium the same day Leah Block got on the podium for her first time in Nitro, which was really cool to experience with her. And so then we just continuously went to the next rounds. And the one thing about Nitrocross is everybody's the same playing field. Everybody's in the same exact car, the same exact setup. You're not allowed to touch the vehicles in between races yourself as a driver. So it makes it very even played. And it was cool racing against Pastrana and at Vegas, Matt Crafton, and whoever else jumped in the car, Brian Deegan and Cowboy Cerrone. Not that he's a race car driver per se, but he's such a big name and such somebody that's so cool to race against. And it's cool to race against so many big names that you don't get to in a normal series.
No, that's definitely for sure. Did you have any moments when you're having in the middle of those races where you're like you see who you've just overtaken or who's overtaken you and like, wait, is that Cowboy Cerrone? What the hell is he doing here? What is this? It's a bit of a bizarre thing, or are you just too focused?
A little bit. Down in Glen Helen, I was having a really good battle with Brian Deegan. And the only way I was really able to get past him was I just made a really good move in the Joker, and I took it at the perfect time. And that was probably one of the most fun races because we were like neck to each other majority of the race. And to be racing against somebody like him is just incredible.
No, definitely. And just before I throw back to you, Nabila, the interesting thing I want to take from that is you're saying that you just wanted to do your best the whole time, and you're obviously competitive because you're a racing driver. It comes with the territory. But do you think that your focus on just going there, making sure that you went through the motions, and if you do well, you do well, but that's not necessarily the main focus. Do you think that helped you to do well then because you're not focused on, I have to get on the podium this race? It's like P4 is enough now, but it just kind of, you went through it and there was less pressure on yourself maybe, and that helped?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the like short course off-road stuff, like there's more of a high pressure situation. But in Nitrocross, like just not getting thrown into it necessarily, but just knowing that I'm going there to have fun and to just enjoy
Hmm.
it and to enjoy being around the people that race it because we're all best friends on and off the track. And to just be able to do that and not have any pressure, not worry about things, not whatever. Therefore, I did pretty well. And obviously, there were times I made my mistakes and blah, blah, but we're race car drivers. We all do it. But and it could especially show going into Vegas because in Vegas, I knew I was locked into third in the championship, and I knew no matter what I finished, it didn't matter for championship standing points. So I was just literally was my only goal was to just go out and have fun the whole weekend. And going into the last round on Saturday, I was starting sixth on the grid because I made mistakes of my own. And I was like, my only goal is to just literally have fun this round, stay out of chaos, stay out of trouble because there's a lot of that in Vegas because the track was so tight. I ended up finishing third, and I was super excited with it and super happy with it just because of how I had made mistakes previously in the day, and to just come out on the box for the last round made me super excited.
That's really funny. I was literally about to ask you. So you're on the podium twice in Las Vegas. That must have
Yeah.
been an awesome feeling. So you said it was the second one that you started sixth and then came third, right? What did you do differently in that round versus the first round where you also finished on the podium? Like, how were you feeling about both of those as separate races?
So the first round went a little bit better just because I got a better qualifying run. I got a better starting position. I actually won one of my heat races, which is the first time I've done that. And then I believe I started third on the grid for the final. And I knew since the track's so tight, as long as you make it through turn one, you really just have to keep consistent and not make mistakes, and you can somewhat hold your line and stay where you are. And we got through turn one and it was chaos behind me, which I learned that after making the first lap and coming back around. But I was like, okay. And then my spotter kept saying, like, you're clear from behind, you're clear, there's no worries, there's no pressure, you're good. So I was just like, okay, I just need to stay like calm and consistent and not make mistakes, and then I can finish third. We're going into the second round. I knew I was starting sixth, and like I just said, I was like, my only goal was to just do well. Like that was it. Just stay out of trouble and bring the car back on one piece. And then after I got off the starting line and I got off clean and there was no crashes, there was no nothing, I was like, okay. And then I just started working my way up and people kept making their own mistakes. And Tyler and Kanan made their own mistakes because it would probably be the same if I was in the same position, but when you're battling for a championship and you're that close, pressure gets to you and you make mistakes. And I knew that, and I wasn't going to destroy their races because I knew that they were in the championship, and I simply wasn't, just because of how I had finished, and I knew I had third locked in. So I just let them be and let them make their own mistakes. And the next thing I know, I was running third, and I was like, okay, I'll take it.
Absolutely. How does it feel going into after you've had such a good race like you did on that first one? How did you feel coming off the back of making those mistakes in the qualifying rounds and things? Like, I know you said that you kind of just let it go and you're like, where I finish is what I finish, but truly, as a driver, do you think you sat there and worried about your mistakes, or are you one of those people that try to park them in the past and not think about it?
I try my best not to worry about them. There was times, if you go back to Salt Lake City, I made mistakes there and they got to my head, and I tried not to overthink them, but I definitely did. But Vegas, I made one big mistake in Heat 1, I believe it was, and it was my own fault, like completely my fault. And I fell back to the back of the pack, which was fifth, which was fifth. And the two drivers in front of me, because the track's so tight, I couldn't get around them simply enough. And the two drivers in front of me eventually made their own mistakes. And I did get around them and finish third. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'll take it. Like, I think I could definitely be up in first or second for sure if I hadn't made the mistake at the beginning. But finishing third, I'll take it. And it just sets me up better for the next one than I thought I was going to be fifth. Because I wasn't going to crash the car, because the way that the things work with Nitro is there's less than 10 guys that have to work on all 12 cars because it's all spec, and the drivers themselves or anybody with the drivers are not allowed to touch the cars. So if you go out and you crash your vehicle, there's only an hour in between heat 1 and heat 2 for so many people to fix the vehicle. And it's the same way with every car. So there's only so many people with every car, or for all the cars. So that's the one thing that us as drivers, I think it's really cool for Nitro, because we work together. We know that if you take one person out, they might not make it back to the next round. And we want all the cars in the races because that's what makes it fun and that's what makes it exciting.
Definitely. I think that's important. And that's really nice to see, like, the whole field is definitely in that mentality. Like, we're not trying to win by knocking people out.
Absolutely. It's what makes it fun for sure.
I know this is the Nitro RX podcast, but I do have to ask about Extremely, because you went from racing against Travis Pastrana to somehow being his teammate in Legacy Motorsport, which Jimmy Johnson is part of, and kind of is his brainchild. How did all of that happen? And what was the first round like in Saudi Arabia? Because, like you say, you did that just before Vegas. That's an insane couple of weeks.
Yeah, so I've said previously to people who have asked me, we found out only about 5 or 6 days before the public found out. So I really had no idea what was happening.
And
I
we
had
didn't
been
find out that much time beforehand either.
exactly. Neither did I. I went there and I still was clueless what was happening or how this all happened, but I was just like, I'm not gonna complain. But I went down to Uruguay in 2022 to go watch the Extreme E race. Like, we
Hmm.
took our own money, we went down there to go watch
It was
it
a
and
great
be
round to
part of it.
watch.
Yeah, for sure. And hang out. I hung out with some of the teams and just, got like the general idea of how everything worked. And then it was still always on my mind, but I kind of put it in the back of my mind going into 23, just because I was focusing on off-road and the truck and everything else. and then eventually Nitrocross, and then fast forward to I literally think it was a month ago at this point. Um, we I was sitting on a bed and Travis texted me. He goes, "Hey, are you gonna be busy next weekend?" I said, "No." He goes, "Okay, could you fly to Saudi Arabia?" And I said, "Sure." I was like, he's like, "We might have an opportunity to go race Extreme Me in Saudi Arabia next week." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And
Plenty of notice.
I was like, "Sure." And he was like, "We're gonna be leaving in literally a week." And I was like, "Okay." And next thing I know, there's just emails flooding in and messages and this, that about what you had to do to get everything to be able to be there and blah, blah, blah. And then next thing I know, I literally was sitting on a plane going to Saudi Arabia, not knowing really too much of what was happening or how this all worked together. I knew it was with Legacy Motorclub. I knew it was with Jimmy Johnson. I spoke to everybody on the phone, but it was just so crazy and so many things happening in such a small time span that it was chaos.
But it's that
And
innate trust in Travis, though, to just be like, yeah, sure, whatever, let's get on the plane and let's just go here.
absolutely. So Jimmy couldn't make the race because he was doing the Daytona 500.
Hmm.
And because it was all thrown together last minute, obviously he already committed to that, and that's NASCAR. So of course he's going to go do that. And so he's been friends with Travis forever. And so he called Travis up and he was like, "Can you be in Saudi Arabia this week to do this?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure." And then Jimmy was kind of like, "Well, I'm giving you the opportunity to pick the female driver because you are sort of more aware in the dirt, like off-road aspect of what's going on." And so me and Travis have had a friendship for a while now, but obviously it all depends on availability. And he contacted a few other people and then eventually got to me and he was like, "Are you free?" And I was like, "Yep, but let's go." And so it was about as last minute as, like I said, we announced it to the public and the public knew.
You didn't do too badly, really, either, did you? You came out as these underdogs, and you really leaned into that across the whole weekend of racing, and you really took it to a lot of the drivers that you were up against. You weren't like hanging back or far away. You were getting into it. I mean, Gutierrez was one I think was a good example. There, like she is. I mean, we knew she was quick from Nitrocross, but I think Cody was then on commentary saying, "I did tell you that." You can't underestimate these two. I mean, Travis is one thing we know he's nuts, but Gray is like this quiet assassin on the track there, and you definitely proved that.
Absolutely. It was crazy to be over there for one. And two, I have made a total of 6 laps in the Group E car with Travis. And that's the only electric vehicle I've ever driven ever. So jumping into the E car and basically going out with only 10 minutes in the car prior to the first race or first practice session, uh, while like I said, only having that few laps in an E car under my belt was nonetheless crazy within itself, but then also those cars are massive and nobody
Yeah,
understands how big they are until I say they have 37-inch tires. And
you got to really see them in person to understand.
yeah, well, everybody in like off-road knows like King Hammers, KOH, the big desert off-road rock crawling races. The side-by-sides run 32-inch tires. The e-cars have 37-inch tires, which they're freaking huge. And they're heavy and they're unlike anything else Travis nor I have ever driven before. They're like a really top heavy, big, bulky side by side kind of. And I've never raced in sand and he has minimal time in sand. And so it was just different for the both of us, but overall we did pretty well. I think we did better than we kind of expected, everything going into it last minute and so forth and so on. But the biggest thing for us was the whole driver change aspect in the middle of the race because
Hmm.
we'd never done any of that.
No, there's the thing that definitely catches a lot of people out the first time, and even after a couple of seasons, you still see mistakes because they're just because the rounds and the calendar are so spread out that you go back to normal racing the rest of the time where you just drive a car normally. You don't have to be doing all this kind of stuff.
Especially, yes, that's very true.
So leading off of that, I'm going to switch it back to Nitrocross, but I'm also going to make this a double part question because I'm curious if you are going to end up back in Extreme E. Do you know if you're coming back to Nitrocross? And if you are you going back in the SXS category? Are we going to see you jump up to the next category? We basically want to know everything about that. And then also, are we going to see you again in Extreme E? Or is that something that's going to be a 6-day question mark beforehand?
I will be racing the next Extreme E races. I can confirm that one. And then for Nitrocross, I'm not sure yet. It's so weird that the schedule is on the off season. So everybody's like, well, are you racing it this year? I'm like, well, the season just ended and it's very confusing. But given that we have so long till the first race now, and I don't have anything going for it quite yet. I would absolutely love to be back in it though. I'm willing to do anything possible to get myself back in one of those cars in any category that is to be back in Nitrocross because it's so much fun.
Do you think it would be SXS that you wanted to go back into, or do you want to try out that next category?
I have ran the next cars back 4 years ago, which is wild to think about. I would love to be in any of it. As a race car driver, if I can get into anything, whether it be a side-by-side or whether it be the groupie car or anything in the middle, I will take it and take the opportunity or be same thing with Extreme E. Yeah, no, any of the classes I'd be more than happy to drive.
If you could go and beat Casper, that'd be great. Someone needs to put him in his place. He's been winning for far too long now in the next category.
Fair enough.
I'm also intrigued then. If you did come back, or even if you didn't, which other women would you love to come and join Nitrocross in the future? Was there anyone from Extreme E, for example, or just your wider racing kind of background that you'd love to come and have a go at it?
Ooh, there's so many that I feel like are already in it. Probably either Kaylee Bryson or Jade Avedissian. They're both
Hmm.
from the short track side of things in motorsports. But I think both of them would probably do really good if they got just a little bit of seat time. I've kind of grown up racing with the two of them in a way, or at least like the same age, the same like era, whatever you want to call it. But knowing and watching that anything they've gotten into, they excel out extremely well. I think both of them would do very well. Like I said, if they just got a little bit of seat time in it.
No, definitely. I mean, Jade in particular last year had a very good year, so it'd be interesting to see what she could do then if you stuck her in any of those categories, like you say.
Exactly.
I just really quickly want to segue off of that question. And since you were one of those little girls that sat there and was like, oh, I could do this. I want to be a race car driver. Okay, maybe you started out in dirt bikes. What advice do you have to young girls at like that 4 to 8 range of what they can do to kind of get involved in the motorsport arena? Because let's be real, there's not that many people out there doing it. And when you talk to a little girl, I wanted to be a racing driver when I grew up. I was one of those lucky people, but some don't get that opportunity. What do you think is your biggest takeaway, or what is that nugget of information you want to give someone to be able to get started?
I think the biggest thing would just be to keep doing it no matter what anybody says, no matter what anybody thinks, which obviously now females in motorsports are getting much more dominant and they're getting much more equal with everybody else.
Mhm.
When I was growing up, it wasn't so much like that, but I grew up from dirt bikes where there are rarely any females. Like I didn't pay attention to it when I got into cars. Like I saw two or three other girls and I was like, okay, cool. There's like more of us. But in dirt bikes, there's so few that you don't even think twice about it. But I think the biggest thing would literally just be to keep pushing. Don't listen to what other people tell you if it's anything negative, and get into absolutely anything that you can possible. Because even if it's just an opportunity to go drive a go-kart, or if it's an opportunity to go drive a late model or a side by side or whatever, it doesn't matter. You just need to be in the seat as much as you can, driving as much as you have the ability to, because eventually it'll show your talent throughout the years.
I like that. That's good advice.
Potentially tricky question for you though, because it's either people nail it immediately or they have no idea what to say. So, can you describe Nitrocross for us in 3 words?
Um, chaos, excitement, and jumps. Or flying, I should say.
I like those. We've
Those are
not
good.
had chaos before. We've asked this
Somehow,
question
no.
a lot. and I've never heard chaos. But you know what? I think that's a great word for it.
I think
It's
that's
the
going to be the one
ultimate.
word I use to describe it from now on. So, why should I watch Nitrocross? Chaos.
It's the best word to explain. And Nitrocross wins as of this year because it's been stupid. Uh,
Okay, I'm going to throw out some quick fire questions, but I'm going to have both of you answering these. So I don't want you sat there thinking about these. I want quick fire, yeah? All right, so well, I guess this first one's not actually that quick fire, but what's your favorite films? Well, film, singular.
Home Alone, Christmas movie, and Top Gun Maverick.
Top Gun Maverick's a
Thiemo?
good choice. Skyfall for me, though.
Ooh, okay. Pizza or burger?
Pizza.
Burger.
Okay. Summer or winter?
Summer.
I'm going to go winter. I'm weird.
Okay. Extreme E or WRC?
The extreme E, I've done it.
Because I was trying to catch
Okay.
you out with that one. Streamy for me as well.
Mine would be WRC. And then this one's just a fun little one. What's the worst birthday present either of you have ever received?
Genuinely not sure for this one. I know I wrote the question, but I didn't realize you'd ask it to me at the time. And now I'm like, I can't think of anything, which I suppose is good. But I'm
Yeah.
sure it's also going to be fueling ammunition for one of my friends now, which I don't like the sound of that.
Probably like a scarf. I don't think I'm ever gonna wear a scarf. I don't think
No? You don't think you go to cold enough places that you're ever gonna
if I go somewhere cold enough, I will be wearing one, but it gets to like 30 degrees Fahrenheit and it's not that cold here.
See, I think that's freezing. Well, it is freezing. It's 0 degrees. How is that
Yes,
not
but where do you
cold?
live, Nabila?
It
I
gets
lived in England, okay? I might live in Florida now, and the most cold I can accept is 12 degrees. No, let's be real, 20 degrees Celsius, but you know.
Florida's different though. Florida air is different than anywhere else because Florida's humid, so it feels different.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to know how people find. Well, I guess they've done the Miami round in January, so it's not actually that humid. And if it's anything like this last year, it's actually cold. I
It's been
think
colder
that
there than it has been here, so.
yeah, it's wild. But at least you don't have to worry about that disgusting humidity of the summer, which we're about to start getting now.
We do, it's just not as bad. It's 80 degrees here today. It's stupid.
Do you need a translation on that, or are you good, Timo?
I'm just going to let it all pass over my head and I'll use real numbers later. But I think that's as good a point as any to finish that podcast on, because I'm not going to start trying to translate British and American temperatures. It's not what the people are here for. So on that note, that's all we've got time for on this week's episode. Thank you to Gray very much for coming on and taking the time to chat with us. Details of where to find Gray, as well as Nabila and I, will be in the description of this episode. Do go and check all of that out, especially as Gray's going to be going back to Extreme E, because if that's how you're starting, going to be very interesting to see where you end up by the end of the season on that one. Nabila and I will be back soon with some more Nitrocross content in this very long off season. So be sure to make sure you've liked, subscribed, and get notifications turned on for everything on that side of things. Thank you very much for watching and listening, and we will see you again soon.